In Colombia, the coalition of the historical pact becomes the leading force in the Senate and the House of Representatives after Sunday's elections marked by several irregularities and seated complaints. In Peru, the Congress will vote on a motion of no confidence against President Pedro Castillo for the second time under allegations of moral incapacity to perform his duties. The Russian and Ukrainian delegations seeking a peaceful solution to the conflict in Donbass established a technical pause in the negotiations during the fourth round of talks held via video conference. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. Colombia's historical pact coalition lists as the top force in the country's Senate and House of Representatives after an election this Sunday that was overshadowed by irregularities and complaints by the population. Colombians denounced flaws in the electoral consensus process and in the information about their polling stations. Also, that electoral juries in at least 26% of the stations failed to hand in electoral cards. On the other hand, authorities of the Electoral Observation Mission lamented the death of 2 soldiers in the midst of actions of irregular groups in the department of Caqueta in this Sunday's elections. The 295 congresspersons of both legislative chambers were elected, as well as the candidates of the 3 main political coalitions of left, center, and right for the presidential elections of next May 29th: Gustavo Petro, Federico Gutierrez, and Sergio Fajardo. The presidential candidate Gustavo Petro affirmed that the historic pact is the first electoral force in the country after Friday's legislative elections.
The result is very important. We are the first force in the Republic Senate, the first force with a number of chambers, and the first force in number of senators. The historical pact coalition has achieved the best result of progressive movements in the history of the Republic of Colombia. And for the presidency, according to the data so far, we surpassed 6 million votes, above even by almost double, in my personal case, the first team Colombia, and more or less 47% of the total result of consultations, which means that we are on the verge of winning the presidency of Colombia in the first presidential round.
In this regard, the presidential candidate for the Team Colombia party, Federico Gutierrez, emphasized that he will continue working to build a better country.
We receive with great joy, but above all with great humility and responsibility, this victory that we have obtained as a team, knowing that the road ahead is long and we will do it very well. Today, united, we take another step on the road that would lead us to build a better country.
And presidential candidate for the Center Hope Coalition, Sergio Fajardo, said he will approach all citizens to make a change in the nation.
We will interpret those Colombians who no longer want the anger, the confrontation, the damage that has been done in our country, and that this government, after 4 years, has represented pain for us in Colombia. This is a government that has given us a Colombia with rage, with corruption, with fear, because insecurity has never been at this level that we are living in all the Colombian territory, with a gigantic uncertainty, the inability to have jobs, and an economy that has benefited a very few, that has not given the opportunity that our people deserve. We're approaching this Colombia from the perspective of building and moving forward. We know that Colombia has to change, and it is going to change.
The historical pact coalition leads the House of Representatives elections with 14.17% of the votes, which will provide the coalition with 25 seats. The Colombian Liberal Party runs second with 14.25% and 32 seats, followed by the Colombian Conservative Party with 12.55% of the votes and 25 seats. The historical pact coalition leads the Senate ballot also with 14.17% of the votes and 16 seats, while the Colombian Conservative Party runs second with 13.57% and 16 seats. The Liberal Party lags behind on third with 12.73% with 15 seats, followed by the Green Alliance Coalition with 14 seats, the Democratic Center with 14, and the Radical Change Party with 11 seats, among others. Gustavo Petro won the presidential candidacy for the Progressive Historic Pact with 80.51% of the ballot and more than 4 million votes in the Colombian elections on Sundays for the presidential candidates. Federico Gutierrez was elected for the right-wing Team Colombia party with 54.18% and more than 2 million votes, while Sergio Fajardo was chosen for the Center Hope coalition with 33.49% and more than 723,000 votes. Journalist and president of TeleSUR, Patricia Villegas, interviewed former Colombian President Ernesto Samper on the program Los Nadies. The former head of state made reference to the winners and losers of these parliamentary elections.
The left showed a great capacity to unite. Gustavo Petro won the election with a historic majority that has never been seen before in preliminary elections. The right, one way or another, obtained an important vote, however very vague. The center did not rise to the occasion. For better or for worse, it indicates the country could approach a scenario of ideological polarization again in the first round between a right wing committed to return to war with neoliberal policies playing to Álvaro Uribe and what would be this left wing that at this moment represent Gustavo Petro.
On the other hand, Ernesto Samper stated the election showed a rejection towards Iván Duque's government and the need to move forward on issues such as the reactivation of the peace agreements and the re-establishment of relations with Venezuela.
The most important fact is these are the second election held within the framework of the Havana peace agreements, that is to say, without the presence of an armed left wing as it existed in the last few years. People expressed their rejection towards the current administration and a desire for change, an important change, not only for the reactivation of the peace processes that are in standby because of this government, but for the other issues like resuming diplomatic relations with Venezuela. An agreement exists within the progressive sectors of the country that the situation with Venezuela needs to be settled.
In an exclusive interview for TeleSUR, the former Colombian president said the big loser of these parliamentary elections was the candidate of Uribismo.
I believe that Álvaro Uribe is turning the page. The big loser was his candidate, Zuluaga, proclaimed by the Democratic Center as a great candidate of Uribism. With a vote obtained by Gutierrez, former mayor of Medellín, who follows Álvaro Uribe's ideological line, we're going to see a change in the candidacy of the Democratic Center, and surely the right will end up all united around Gutierrez's candidacy, with a spokesman of a quite scattered right wing, because there is not an ideological unit here.
Finally, Ernesto Samper spoke about these parliamentary elections from a regional perspective and stated that Latin America is experiencing a wave of progressive forces.
Colombia is not exempt from this stream of progressive movement that are fortunately taking place in the region as a reassessment of the neoliberal economic model. In the case of Colombia, it is an expression of favor of continuing the peace process at a standstill during the last 4 years. Elections like the president of Chile, Peru, Argentina, Mexico, Honduras, Bolivia somehow indicate the region is experiencing a new wave of progressive changes.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. The Peruvian Congress will vote this Monday on a motion of no confidence against President Pedro Castillo for alleged moral incapacity to perform his duties. Peru's parliament will decide whether to debate or not the opposition's initiative to dismiss the president from office. The initiative requires the support of 52 congressmen to be submitted for debate and 87 for its definite endorsement. This is the second time that sectors that oppose President Castillo promote a motion of no confidence against him. In recent days, the president denounced that opposition groups were promoting a coup d'etat. In Argentina, the Senate begins the debate on the agreement with the International Monetary Fund, which has already been approved by the Chamber of Deputies. After the approval of the $45 billion debt refinancing bill on Friday by the Chamber of Deputies, a debt contracted during the administration of former President Mauricio Macri, the Senate Budget Committee meets to debate on the approval of the bill. The Minister of Economy, Martin Guzman, is expected to attend the session with the purpose of answering questions about the debt refinancing project. The new agreement with the IMF is expected to be approved by a majority in Congress before Friday. Ecuador's National Assembly held the second debate of the Organic Intercultural Educational Bill, long awaited by teachers and students across the country. The proposal included important aspects for teachers such as equal pay and fair compensation for retired educators. This issue was one of the most discussed in the session, where many agreed it is up to the Ministry of Economy and Finance to guarantee the resources for the increase in teachers' wages. The proposal included recommendations from parliamentarians to guarantee inclusive, equitable, and quality of education, as well as the rights of those who work in education. Thousands of indigenous supporters of the Zapatista Army of National Liberation marched in the southeastern Mexican state of Chiapas to protest against all capitalist wars, where they show solidarity with Ukraine. More than 5,000 indigenous people of the Zapatista movement from Jayalón, Palenque, Ocasingo, Las Margaritas, and Altamirano took to the streets of Cristobal de las Casas in the southern state of Chiapas, while another group marched in Mexico City, with messages such as "Not to War." Indigenous women and men in balaclavas handed out flyers and chanted, calling on Mexicans to organize against the war of capitalism that kills.
People of Mexico and the world, we Zapatista women say that your pain is our pain. So we call on women to organize our peoples, to mobilize them, each one in her geography and in her schedule, to stop the unjust war.
Vahan Khachaturian was sworn in as Armenia's new president on Sunday after his predecessor Armen Sarkisian abruptly stepped down earlier this year. A seasoned politician and former mayor of the capital city of Yerevan, Khachaturian stepped into the largely ceremonial role after being nominated by the ruling Civil Contract Party. Sarkisian announced his intention to resign in January of this year, arguing that the role of presidency was too constitutionally weak, constraining him from enacting his political vision. The Russian and Ukrainian delegations seeking a peaceful solution to the conflict in Donbass established a technical pause in the negotiations during the fourth rounds of talks held via video conference. The presidential advisor of Ukraine, Mikhail Podolyak, communicated through his social networks this Monday that the talks were being difficult due to different political positions of both countries. This Sunday, the Russian delegation affirmed the aim of this meeting is to make a summary of the preliminary results of the peace dialogues between Moscow and Kiev. In the same context, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky revealed that they have been holding these video conferences continuously for some time now, and said that he hopes to be able to schedule a meeting with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin. After the previous 3 rounds of talks, the parties agreed to establish humanitarian corridors to evacuate civilians from the conflict zones and facilitate food deliveries. Negotiations are expected to resume on March 15th, following the same format. And according to a recent update from the head of the Donetsk People's Republic, Denis Pushilin, the Tochka-U missile launched by the Ukrainian forces on Monday killed 17 people. Pushilin also said that another 28 civilians, including children, were seriously wounded by the missile that carried sharpened warhead. In the meantime, the Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenko stated the missile was fired from an area northwest of the Donetsk control by Ukrainian forces. He charged that the shelling of the area that has no military facilities represented a war crime. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Vershinin stated his country will not ask the United States and European Union member nations to lift sanctions imposed on Moscow in wake of ongoing military operations in Kiev. The Deputy Foreign Minister said while speaking to Izvestia newspaper that even when Washington and the EU have tried to reverse the Kremlin's course using sanctions and other punitive measures, nothing will come of it. Vershinin reaffirmed that sanctions are not Russia's decision. They are being imposed by those who, like the U.S., want to exert pressure on Moscow, put its economy and the people in a very difficult situation, doing this as a punishment for Russia's sovereign political decisions. The diplomat also said these illegal measures imposed to exert pressure on his country will only help Russia develop its economy and independence and rely on its friends. And Moscow said the United States is increasingly abusing its position as the host country of the United Nations, which is headquartered in New York, to obtain political benefits. The statements were made to the Russian agency Sputnik by Pyotr Ilyich, head of international organizations at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The senior official said the U.S. seeks to obtain unilateral political advantages and put more pressure on the embassies of other countries, and added that this violates the foundational norms contained in the Vienna Conventions on diplomatic relations and on consular relations. Last week, and in the midst of the military operation in Ukraine, 12 diplomats from the Russian mission to the UN and their relative left New York and returned to Moscow, expelled by the U.S. accused of espionage. We have more news coming up after this financial break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South again. This Monday, China strongly condemned the United States for severely interfering in China's internal affairs in its arms sale to Taiwan.
The principle and stipulations of the three China-U.S. joint communiques, especially those of the August 17 communique. It severely interferes in China's internal affairs and undermines the China-U.S. relationship and the peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. China has always firmly opposed this. The United States side should earnestly abide by the One China principle and stipulations of the three China-U.S. joint communiques and stop arms sales to Taiwan and military contacts with it.
The spokesman of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs also said China firmly opposes the United States' political manipulation of the Taiwan question and strongly condemns its attempt to blur the concept of One China principle.
There is one China in the world, and Taiwan is an inseparable part of China's territory. This is a historical and legal fact, and is the consensus of the international community. Any correctly marked map should be based on these facts. The move of the United States is grossly interfering in China's internal affairs with an attempt to engage in political manipulation under the pretext of the so-called Taiwan map issue, creating two Chinas or one China, one Taiwan. China is strongly dissatisfied and with firmly opposed to that. We sternly warn the U.S. side that playing the Taiwan card is as dangerous as playing with fire while holding firewood, which will not only push Taiwan into peril, but also bring unbearable consequences to the U.S. side itself. The U.S. should stop making the One China principle vague and hollowing it out, stop pampering and supporting Taiwan's secessionist activities, but return to the original and true meaning of the One China principle, honor its political commitments to China, so as truly safeguard peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and the larger interest of China-U.S. relations.
China faces the most severe COVID-19 wave since the beginning of the pandemic, and government authorities ordered to take more comprehensive control measures to curb the outbreaks in several regions of the nation. The latest outbreak has considerably raised the number of new cases per day and has made the Asian nation alter in small ways its zero-COVID policy by allowing for the first time rapid antigen testing for public use. Chinese health authorities registered 1,437 new infections, most of them 1,337 of local transmission in the last 24 hours, which means that the country has already recorded more than 1,000 infections per day for several days. The worst situation is in the eastern province of Yulin, but cases have been detected in at least 16 provinces and regions in China, including the 4 megacities of Beijing, Tianjin, Shanghai, and Chongqing. Tehran warned that it will not tolerate threats coming from neighboring Iraq, a day after Iranian military claimed responsibility for missile strikes on its northern Kurdistan region, targeting an Israeli site.
That one of our neighbors that has deep relations with us becomes a center of creating threats against the Islamic Republic. Iran will not tolerate that a center near its borders becomes the center for sabotage, conspiracy, and for sending terrorist groups to Iran. The central government of Iraq has been notified several times not to allow Iraq's borders with Iran to become insecure.
Gunmen killed at least 13 gendarmes in an ambush at Taparco, a mining town in Burkina Faso, the latest in a series of attacks in the north of the country. A security source added that as well as the 13 confirmed dead, a number of other gendarmes were missing. An additional 8 gendarmes were wounded in the attack, 2 of them seriously, and they had been evacuated from treatments in Tuguri. The flashpoint, tree border area in the north, is frequently targeted by Islamic State in the Greater Sahara and the Al-Qaeda affiliated groups for the support of Islam and Muslims, with deadly attacks against civilians and soldiers. Attacks with homemade bombs have multiple since 2018, costing the lives of around 300 people, civilians and military. On Sunday, China's ruling military council and representatives of rebel forces and opposition groups met for the formal opening of peace talks in Qatar. The meeting is part of a diplomatic effort to halt decades of fighting and instability in the nation. The negotiations aim to pave the way for the head of the board, General Mahamat Idris Deby, to lead Chad towards new elections. Deby assumed control of the Transitional Council and dissolved parliament after his father and former president, Idris Deby, died of wounds sustained while fighting rebels who were trying to overthrow his government in the north of the capital. This high-level meeting is considered a crucial first step in the reconciliation process.
My government has adopted a roadmap to be implemented over 18 months, and the main stages of implementation are as follows: an organization of an inclusive national dialogue, open to all, including armed groups; the adoption by referendum of a new constitution; the organization of presidential and legislative elections, transparent and credible to close the transition process, to rebuild the state on solid foundations.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.